Acts chapter 16. We're in Philippi. As a matter of fact, we're with Paul and Silas in a Philippian jail, down in the heart of the jail, with their feet in stocks, after being severely beaten with rods. All right, now, I have a little bit of a homework challenge for you. Don't try to get beaten with rods, but in your mind, imagine when was the last time that you bumped an immovable object with some part of your body enough that it left a bruise. Okay, now imagine that all over your body, from the back of your head to the bottoms of your feet. Imagine what it would good grief. Okay, now think about the day or one of the days when you woke up after a long, hard day of activity previous, and your body was so stiff and sore. Now, sit on the floor with your feet outstretched and sit there for, 5, 6 hours, 8 hours, maybe 10. Now you get, even if you only did that in your imagination, now you get more what Paul and Silas might have been experiencing, especially physically, let alone emotionally, in this Philippian jail. I can tell you what my response to that kind of suffering would be. It would not be positive. It would not be exemplary. I'm pretty much the king of complaint, and frankly, this gives lots to complain about. I'm sort of the count of, why me? Why are you letting this happen? Why don't you deliver me? So I guess what I'm saying is, if I had been in this position with Paul and Silas, I would not have had the attitude that I think they had. Because in verse 25, you get data about what they might have been feeling. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God. I would have been praying. I probably would have been praying a curse on the Philippian authorities for doing this. And again, I would have been screaming out to God, why did you let this happen to me? I don't think that's what they were doing, because they were praying and singing hymns to God. Where did the hymns come from? They didn't have a hymnal. Well, they kind of did. It was in their memory. They had memorized most of the serious Hebrew men would have memorized much of the book of Psalms. And that was the Hebrew songbook. Maybe they were singing new songs. I don't think it was kind of like Elf in the movie, you know, how he's making up song and it's just really squirrely. I don't think it was that. At any rate, they were praying and singing hymns to God, so that they were having a little bit of a church service. Okay, I'm going to expose a bias you know I have. Who were they singing for? They had an audience of one, and their audience was God himself. They were singing hymns to God. I sometimes struggle with my perception of what I think is kind of framed up and named contemporary worship music, contemporary praise music. Okay, some of it's good on a musical level, and some of it is just completely derivative. I mean, turn on the top 40 station, you're going to hear the same basic patterns, sometimes real similar tunes. The words are, in what I consider good praise music, the words are good theology. They're biblical. They're consistent with biblical theology anyway. But, and I know I'm an old guy, I don't hear that very much when I'm hanging, before church service. It maybe 1 out of 3 or 4 fit that mold. The rest are kind of, they fit the mold of good music and good lyrics. The rest are kind of mediocre music done very loud, with lights, fog machines. Can you see where I'm going? I'm an old guy, okay? If you love that kind of music, that's good. Fine. Enjoy it, okay? Now, here's the second piece. When I'm sitting in the crowd, it's a little bit hard for me sometimes to discern, are these people on the stage, are they performing for me or are they singing to God? Now, here's the other part. For me in the seat, am I singing to God or am I just caught up in a moment? Oh boy, could we go for this? We could talk about this for hours. No need. Just come back to the scripture in verse 25. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the other prisoners were listening to them. That's an interesting concept. I don't think Paul and Silas were singing in order to be heard by the other prisoners. I think the other prisoners heard them because they were not, I don't know whether they were good singers. And I have no idea whether the other prisoners would have been familiar with the hymns. I don't know. But Paul and Silas were singing loud enough, and it was all hard surfaces in that prison, so you talk about an echo chamber. But the other prisoners heard. Verse 26. Now remember, what's the time frame? About midnight. Suddenly, there was such a violent earthquake that the foundations of the prison were shaken. Stop. If you're in a stone prison and there is an earthquake, now if it's me, I'm thinking, holy cow, this whole place could come down on top of me. I could have an instant execution. Next sentence. At once, all the prison doors flew open and everyone's chains came loose. I don't know whether they came loose from their wrists or whether they came loose from the wall. I don't know, but I do know this was, the cell doors were open. The chains had been loosened. That was a great formula or recipe for escape. Verse 27, the jailer woke up. Well, yeah, I've not been in an earthquake. We've had, when I was living in Las Vegas, when Debbie and I were living there for 13 years, we would occasionally have, a little tremor. But I've never been in an actual earthquake and don't care to be. But a lot of Californians used to happen frequently there. As a matter of fact, used to happen frequently in Oklahoma. Okay, never mind. At once, the prison doors flew open. Everyone's chains came loose. The jailer woke up. Yeah. And when he saw the prison doors open, he drew his sword and was about to kill himself because he thought the prisoners had escaped. Well, I mean, that's the reason to commit hara-kiri? In his day, yes. Here's the thing. If in the Roman system you had been left in charge of prisoners, if any one of those prisoners escaped, you had to serve their penalty. And if all the prisoners escaped, may as well kill yourself because you're going to be killed by your superiors. It wasn't the world was not quite friendly at that point in time. And verse 28, but Paul shouted, "Don't harm yourself. We're all here." I don't know. This is interesting to me. I don't think Paul would have been able to see the jailer. But I think he would have, connected the dots that with this happening, with the chains falling off and the doors bursting open, I think he knew that jailer's going to try to kill himself. "Don't harm yourself," he said. "We're all here." Which is interesting because the other prisoners could have escaped, but for some reason they didn't. I don't know. Did God make them stay put? Or were they still so traumatized by the earthquake that they were kind of frozen? I don't know. All right, moving on to verse 29. The jailer called for lights. Remember, at midnight, in that day, there was no kitchen light on, there was no night light anywhere. It would have been dark. Because leaving a lamp lit all night was expensive. Okay. So, depending on the phase of the moon, and I have no idea where it was, it could have been, dark as dark can be. The jailer called for lights, which probably would have been a torch or two, maybe a oil lamp or two, and he rushed in and fell trembling before Paul and Silas. That, to me, I think he would have recognized Paul's voice. Don't minimize the emotion this guy would have been feeling. Because the emotion, I think, would have been, "You saved my life." In verse 30, he brought them out and asked, "Sirs, what must I do to be saved?" This is an indication to me that the jailer had some knowledge of Paul and Silas and what they had been doing, that they were preaching, and that they had a message unlike any of the messages of any of the other, and there were many, religions that he would have had some background with as a Roman citizen. What must I do to be saved? I had that happen to me once, not in this exact same way, but a young man who became a dear, dear lifelong friend from Bangladesh asked me, "How do I convert to become a Christian?" His family was Muslim, and he just sincerely wanted to know. And oh, by the way, the reason he wanted to know is because of the witness, almost the silent witness, of a young woman that he worked with who happened to be the daughter of a good friend of mine. It's a long story, but to have that question asked, and that was a treasure, a delight, and a gift. Okay, we got to come back to this next time on Soul Care with Stevie Boy.